Hi, I'm Venus O'Hara and welcome to another video. The other day, someone wrote to me and asked me if I identified as a bisexual because I've made references to sleeping with men and women. And I thought this is a great opportunity to answer this question because today is International Bisexual Day or Bisexual Awareness, or I'm not quite sure what the right terminology is. So I thought what a wonderful opportunity to speak about bisexuality. Well, when I hear the word bisexual, I don't really identify with it as such, but there were times when I suppose I did more than now. But in summary, I would identify myself as a heteroromantic, occasionally sapphic, sapiosexual and demisexual. A lot of labels there. But in general, I am mostly heterosexual and I am emotionally attracted to men. I have had sapphic dalliances in the past, and I must confess, for me, it was very confusing at first. And I think this need to label yourself, it can be helpful in some circumstances, but in others it can be a bit limiting in some ways. For example, it's very common for straight women to have lesbian fantasies. It's actually one of the most common fantasies among straight women. And I had this fantasy for many, many years. And it was a kind of fantasy that was just in my head. It was something that I didn't actually attribute a person or an identity to the women I was thinking about. It was just a pure fantasy. But then I did find someone who did spark that interest in me, or who inspired me actually, and I ended up, it was a very confusing time for me because it ended up becoming emotional, and that's something that I did not expect at all. And in that confusion, I was in a rush almost, or kind of pressuring myself to define what my sexuality was. And the word bisexual for me felt so confusing. And at that time as well, I was very interested in discovering more about girl-on-girl sex with women, and I was kind of not so interested in men at that point. I didn't want to kind of like say never again, but I was really interested in discovering this whole new way of having sex. And I remember at the time, the woman I had sex with the first time and I kind of really fell for, I was telling her how confused I felt, and she was a real lesbian. She'd never been with a man, never wanted to be with a man, and she said to me, "You're not bisexual, you're not a lesbian, you're just sexual." And I remember at the time I felt really offended by that, and I thought, you don't understand what it's like. It's very confusing. I mean, and then, but now, years later, I kind of think she was right. So I don't like to kind of identify myself as a certain label anyway. I think I am a sexual person. Oh, this thing's a bit in the way here. So that's how I kind of see it now. And I remember at the time I was watching The L Word, which is an incredible series. It was around, I think it was the 2000s, I think, and I was watching it around 2008, 2009, 2010. And there was a character in the first season called Jenny, and she was a writer, which I can identify with being a writer myself. And she was straight, but then her next door neighbors was a lesbian couple, and she was spying on them, and it started to kind of provoke lots of curious feelings within her. She became bicurious, and then she was having this lesbian affair with this character called Marina, and that coupling was my favorite because it was like all of that confusion of being with a woman for the first time and the forbidden fruit of having an affair. But for me, I remember this character had, sex with the boyfriend, then sex with the female lover, almost in parallel. But for me, it was very confusing to be in a sexual situation and then undoing bras and having these different sensations. It was like discovering something new that I never knew existed. And after that first woman, I wanted to kind of discover more and more and more, because the first person I was with, even though I did get emotional, we didn't really get on. We were night and day, and that you can be night and day with someone, but we just clashed on many topics, which that kind of clash did fuel the passion though. But if I was to actually have a relationship with a woman, I'd want someone who's a bit more, I don't know how to say it, but someone I didn't clash with, someone who I had like a peaceful connection with, rather than this fiery passion, almost disagreeing sometimes. And I remember, I had a period of my life when I was mostly with women for about 3 years. And it was very clandestine as well. I actually connected with other bisexual women on a bisexual forum here in Barcelona, which is a lot of fun actually, because a lot of the women in this group, they had boyfriends and they had this agreement with them that they could go to a lesbian club in this bisexual group, and then if they went home with a woman, that would be fine and there would be no issues with their relationship. And then in the kind of lesbian clubs, it was very strange for me, because I was used to not making any effort at all in a straight scenario where you just go out, you make an effort to put your lipstick on and look pretty, and then men approach you. But then and when it's all women, it was a bit kind of different. And I know some of the women I was with in this group did have the balls to kind of make the first move, but I was like, oh no, it was very unfamiliar territory for me. And for me, I was always attracted to more androgynous women. I wasn't really attracted to women who wore loads of perfume and rattled with all the accessories they were wearing and wearing skirts and long hair. I was more into kind of androgynous women, and the women who would kind of treat me like a princess. Very similar energy to what I was used to with men, but at the same time they were actually, you know, very feminine when they were naked, if that makes any sense. And also in some of my situations, or some of the how would I say, the flings that I had, I remember another girl said to me that I wasn't sexual, I was sensual. And I was like, oh, what does that mean? Is that a good thing or a bad thing? But I really do believe that was true now as well, that I was really more interested in just stroking the body and just kind of feeling those curves and the soft skin. It was just, I wasn't really into kind of like aiming for orgasms all the time. It was a very sensual situation, very different to being with a man. But I remember when after the 3-year period, well, going on about how clandestine it was, there was this club I used to go to every Saturday night with this group of friends, and if you didn't meet someone that night, then I would be on kind of lesbian dating sites the next day or something like that. But outside those two situations of lesbian dating sites and this lesbian club or lesbian parties, I didn't feel that there were any other circumstances to meet women, which was very frustrating for me. So it all felt very clandestine and a bit underground. You have to make a real effort to kind of move in these circles, because sometimes you don't really know. I mean, you just assume that everyone's straight unless they're very open about their sexuality. So I did find it quite difficult to actually meet women. But then when I started to realize that maybe I kind of, how would I say it? I was starting to feel more attraction to men gradually again. That kind of desire in me was getting stronger. And I remember going to this networking event and feeling a strong desire to be with men again. And I was thinking, wow, anything can happen tonight. Because it just felt like meeting a man could happen in any situation. It was a lot more open, a lot more, just not so underground and not so hidden. So that was an incredible situation as well, going back to discovering straight sex and all that. So I have not been with women ever since, actually. I had one experience, but it was just a sexual experience, nothing emotional at all. But now I'm still kind of in my fantasy world, I'm still very sapphic. But in terms of what I am aiming for now, I mean, I went to this speed networking event a couple of weeks ago, and you had to put a sticker on to say if you're interested in men, women, or either. And I was like, men. I definitely crave masculine energy now at this point in my life. And I do think sexuality is fluid, and it can depend on the circumstances and the people in your life as well. And who knows, I could definitely meet a woman again in the future, definitely. I'm not going to rule that out. But now I really do feel a stronger attraction to men. And actually recently, this year in Barcelona for the Pride festival, and I can't remember when it was, in July or June, they had lesbians as the protagonists of the festival. And I was in a party with some gay guys actually before this, before one of the Pride events, and I was thinking, wow, it's great that lesbians are getting all this attention for this the Pride this year. And they're like, yeah, it's about time, it's good. And I said, imagine if it was bisexuals. And everyone's like, there's a lot of biphobia around. People assume that you cannot be bisexual, you cannot like both things, or that it's impossible to like things both in the same way at the same level. And I think that's not true. I think bisexuality is probably the most popular sexuality. Look at the Kinsey scale from 0 to 6, very completely heterosexual, completely homosexual, then most of us are, between those levels and those degrees of homosexuality or heterosexuality can vary throughout our lives. So I definitely think that sexuality is fluid, and who knows if what my flow will be in the future. But I do think there's definitely lots of biphobia, and I think it's also perceived as someone who's being greedy, or I don't know, that you can go out. And for me, it's not. I don't feel as though I'm attracted to both men and women in the same way. I mean, that was a point in my life where it was definitely more women, but now it's definitely more men, like big time. And I would definitely consider myself mostly straight now, with the odd sapphic fantasy. But yeah, definitely a lot of biphobia around. And sometimes it can be, I know some people who were bisexual for a while, then they actually identified more as lesbian after discovering the same sex, and some people who went back to discovering men more, and some people are just still in the middle. So it can definitely flow, and it can definitely be confusing though. And yeah, those are my thoughts on bisexuality anyway. So that today was a kind of coincidence that someone asked me about this a couple of days ago, and I can speak about it today. But do I feel as though it's the day of my sexuality? No, not really. For now, I just don't go with any label. I think sometimes labeling can make you feel like a sense of community or belonging or understanding of yourself, but also it can put limits. And for me, I don't really want to put any labels on my sexuality. But yeah, if I could choose, I definitely want some masculine energy in my life a little bit more. Anyway, what about you? What do you think about sexuality or bisexuality? Is it possible to like both things at the same level? What do you think? I would love to read your comments in the comment section below. And if you have any questions about sexuality, sex toys, lifestyle, or anything else that I talk about on this channel, don't hesitate to contact me at venus@venusohara.org, and I'll be back very soon. Thanks for watching.